I'm gonna start the September 2nd meeting of the MCI Advisory Board. And I think I should do a roll call, starting with Lee,
Present.
Peter,
Present.
Linda,
Here.
Scott,
Here.
Dan here, John,
Here.
Mark,
Here.
Aaron,
Here.
Patrick,
Here.
and Elizabeth.
Here.
Clerk for the meeting? Anybody eager to do that? Thank you, Aaron. All right. We have some meetings to approve. Do we, Megan, are we okay with that? Since Shannon's not here?
The minutes.
Minutes?
Are we okay with?
Are we okay?
Approving the minutes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
absolutely. August, the first set is for the August 4th non-executive session meeting.
Make a motion to approve minutes for the August 4th non-executive session.
Do we have a second? All those in favor, again, we have to do a vote. Sorry, that's okay. Peter,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Scott, Dan, aye, John, aye, Mark,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Patrick, and Elizabeth.
Aye.
Thank you. Second set of minutes is for the same date, August 4th, and the executive session.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the August 4th executive session.
Second. Sorry, thank you, John. Peter,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Dan, aye, John, aye, Mark,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
and Patrick,
Aye.
and Elizabeth.
Aye.
And the last set is for August 18th. This is the joint meeting with the Land Use Working Group and the Select Board. Peter,
I make a motion to approve joint meeting minutes of August 18th.
second, thank you, John. Peter,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Scott, aye, Dan, aye, John, and aye, Mark,
Aye.
Aaron,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Patrick,
Aye.
and Elizabeth.
Aye.
And Emily just walked in, but we won't put you on the spot. You're good, that's all right, I'll take that. All right. So, the next order of business is updates on the DCAM coordination, the last DCAM coordination meeting. Megan, do you wanna walk through that, or do you want me to do it, or Mark?
I defer to either of you.
Mark, do you want me to do it?
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to remember exactly, I can tell you this.
I'll look at my notes.
Okay.
What was the date for that?
It was the date, the same date as our last meeting, which so would have been the 18th. It was that, no, it's that Friday, sorry, that Friday, which would be the 22nd. 19th. On Thursday.
Did he?
Could be.
Yeah, that's what true.
My recollection of what we talked about was, a continuation of, keeping the pressure on us to continue to make progress. They're very eager to do that. And I think we had a brief discussion about the, wastewater treatment, just in terms of the ongoing negotiation. I think they acknowledged that they're going to give us an extension.
Right, and that's gone through at this stage.
Okay.
So we sent them a letter, they responded, yes. So we've got till the end of August of next year, 26.
Yeah. Trying to think of other things.
Yeah, it looked like they were. In terms of things they were thinking about doing, they were working on wastewater treatment facility documentation, which I believe they were sharing with Alan and his team. They were trying to have some ongoing dialogue with Department of Transportation and looking forward to any input we could give them on what we might like them to prioritize in terms of public engagement.
So, as it relates to the wastewater treatment portion, I had both Linda and I had a couple of conversations with Alan and Weston Sampson. And based on that last conversation, I invited Alan and Weston Sampson, but we got the timing a little bit confused today, so I think Alan's gonna help us out.
I should be
Sure,
sure,
absolutely.
absolutely. Sorry. Did they ask about timing of a meeting, the spring or fall for? Before the master plan?
It came up as a general item, but not as a specific, we're gonna get it done, we're not get it done.
So they didn't put it.
No.
So before we jump over to Alan, did they mention that DCAM has declared surplus about 20 other properties in eastern Massachusetts? So we are no longer the exclusive large property that we had thought we were, and some of our assumptions were based on. So, you know, so I think that should be sort of followed up at the next DCAM meeting to sort of see where they're at with those other properties.
Do you raise that just because of priority in addressing this site? Like what?
Yeah, I raise it in the context of addressing our priorities on this site, because we had sort of assumed that we had a unique market niche. It may not be as unique as we had hoped, because one of the properties is in Bedford.
It's not very.
You know, and some of it may be, you know, some of the VA hospital there or something like that. So there's other things in play that weren't there when our studies were done.
Got
Are there large ones like ours or?
Some of them are large, they're scattered sites, different sizes.
Are they Eastern Mass?
Easter, I think it maybe most of the Commonwealth, but a lot of them are in Eastern Mass.
We also have, Elizabeth has her hand, I don't hand me.
I had the same question, if there was anything close by and anything comparable in size, but it sounds like there are things close by, anything comparable in terms of acreage?
We're gonna have to ask DCAM for the list of what they have, so we
Okay.
can assess that.
I haven't heard of anything of that scale. But I will raise it.
Yeah, it was brought to my attention by our consultant from Niche.
Any other questions? Okay, so, as I mentioned, I invited Alan to come in to sort of talk about the progress that he and Weston Sampson have made, and, because it seems like, based on what he shared, it would be important for us as a group to understand that as we start to deliberate about the direction that we're going. So,
Sure, great. Again, good evening, Alan Cathcart, Director of Concord Public Works. This update is informed based on some of Weston and Sampson's work, as well as some conversations with DCAM and the whole concept of, you know, the schedule for the town accepting responsibility ownership for the wastewater treatment plant is sort of one track that we're working towards, as well as the zoning and redevelopment of the rest of the campus. And it's pretty clear that it's important that we start defining what that area of interest really is. You know, I think most of you have been out at the site. People are generally aware of the structures that they've seen, you know, sort of the brick and mortar. But obviously when DCAM sort of made this, you know, proposal, they're aware that there might be some areas sort of around the immediate facilities that may also be of interest or need to incorporate as part of this wastewater, you know, kind of planning concept. All along, we've talked about, you know, with this group, that the existing facility is a surface water discharge treatment facility, which is really the golden ticket, you know, that we're very interested in. They don't make new ones in Massachusetts. Most larger developments without a surface water discharge end up with groundwater discharge. That's just the nature of the regulatory process. DCAM knows we're exploring the former sand beds that were used to polish the wastewater. And we were sort of entertaining the idea that maybe we could possibly enhance or expand treatment capacity by utilizing those. So we did some hydrogeologic assessment of those sand beds to try and determine could they potentially receive wastewater in the form of groundwater discharge. It wouldn't be open sand pits like they were formerly used, but something like a leaching field, you know, but only on a larger scale. So these concepts we've talked here, we've done some technical work. We're getting to a point where we think we want to present something to DCAM for consideration, because whatever area the town is going to want to receive as part of that facility, we need to do the due diligence on that property. It might be a little bit different than the rest of the campus. Specifically trying to figure out what environmental work would need to be done, inclusive of phase 2 assessment and that sort of thing. So it's at this point, I think I'm gonna hit you with the roll-up of what we're trying to achieve and why. Go ahead,
Just
Dan.
one quick
Yeah.
question. Is alternative technologies allowed at a wastewater treatment scale to this time?
It wouldn't be prohibited, but we're not really at this point looking at alternative technologies. We're looking at sort of more conventional design. And conventional wastewater treatment plant, you're usually looking at some sort of nutrient limiters. It's whether it's phosphorus or nitrogen, depending on the receiving waters, but those are all part of the kind of the bigger picture we're looking at. What we have learned, and sort of after conversations with a few different people and understanding what we're after, what's at stake here is the one potential silver bullet the town has beyond that campus of identifying wastewater capacity that could allow for economic growth development outside the campus, but not to the exclusion of. That's what's interesting. Taking the existing capacity of 310,000 gallons a day, if we were to simply just build out treatment and replace the treatment process that's there, we can come to a cost per gallon of what that would take. Why we're interested in expanding capacity is we believe if by expanding it, it's not going to be so much on the brick and mortar equipment, but maybe on groundwater site, we could potentially reduce that cost per gallon of new capacity, whether it's for redevelopment on MCI or redevelopment outside of that campus. So it's sort of a win-win for any developer in town. So that's a big concept that we've been sort of working towards. So part of the work we've been doing in Weston and Sampson is to start identifying and framing that.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
What was the silver bullet exactly?
The fact that we have a treatment facility that has surface water discharge, that's the NIPD's permit, an existing facility that we could possibly expand that capacity. So one thing I think we're starting to realize is even the highest density development that you folks anticipated with your third, option as far as the most dense is not going to be problematic for that treatment facility. That's good. How much additional capacity could be beneficial to the rest of the town is really what we're trying to identify. Because if it was simply beneficial to the state for its existing operations for the farm, the prison farm, state police, and redevelopment, we wouldn't be, at least we, Public Works, wastewater, wouldn't be as engaged. It would simply be a private, benefit. Excuse me one second. Because of the existing potential for greater capacity for the rest of that's why we're plugged in. That's why we continue to stay, sort of very active. But that concept of the more capacity we can generate on that campus, the lower the cost per gallon of new flow, everybody wins. There's some trade-offs. So we've had some conversation. We've talked with Keith Bergman on the village, the Junction Village campus, because that may sort of come into play. And what I want to do is share a concept with you on, Megan, if you can bring up that plan that was sent just to orient everybody to the campus.
Alan, Linda had a question.
Yeah, go ahead,
So
yeah.
can you just give us some parameters in terms of what to the town is like the current cost per gallon, and then what you envision the 310 achieving, and then how, how much, so we have an
Yeah.
idea as to the delta of how
Yes,
much further down we need to go the curve to really make this economic.
And-
right,
and
we
the-
had,
The
yeah,
cost, and the cost,
and the cost.
the cost are going from 310 to
Exactly.
capacity, because we have to factor that in.
Exactly. So presently, we have a sewer improvement fee that's, set at $44 per gallon for additional capacity. It was set more than 10 years ago, I think it was about 15 years ago. And it was at that time, sort of, what it might cost to generate. It was 155,000 gallons of wastewater capacity over at our existing wastewater treatment plant. And we're now looking at that cost as grossly inadequate to realize. We're probably up closer to $100 per gallon. For this campus, we're sort of doing
$100 per gallon to build new capacity.
for new users to come in, to pay for the capacity, but it's limited. It's only about 155,000 gallons of what we could sell, which is significantly less than what the town needs based on its long-range planning. So it's an inadequate capacity, it's expensive, it's a first come, first serve, and the town doesn't realize a lot of its interests, which have been identified in Vision Concord, as well as the housing changes with zoning, with the MBTA and all that. So it's not necessarily a framework that stands alone. We knew that. That's why we were going to be doing our own independent sort of dog and pony show on where are we with wastewater before MCI came. When we look at MCI, if you look at this plan, go ahead.
So a little fuzzy on these
Yeah.
numbers, so currently, that's what you're charging new customers, like,
Well,
say one of the 40Bs.
Yeah.
They're gonna
yes,
pay $44 per gallon, but it's costing us $100 per gallon?
yes.
Oh, okay.
So it's off to begin with. We know that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's off.
That's the new math.
No, I'm telling you, it's been off and we've been sort of identifying that before MCI came on. We were about to do an assessment and there was no relief valve that we really had in place. It would have been revisiting, expanding capacity at the existing facility over on Old Bedford.
So then we'll be potentially expanding capacity. How does that drive down the cost? The
So let me
average cost,
explain that,
Marginal
yeah.
cost, however
That's
you
right.
wanna tell me that, but or are we just generating more $100 per gallon costs that somebody somehow is paying for, but not the ratepayers and.
Yeah, so let's go to MCI.
Okay.
Okay, so Megan, can you kind of put that on the screen so we can see the campus?
You wanna see that?
Yeah, that,
Okay.
okay, that's helpful. So just to orient you, if you kind of,
Want me to point?
yeah, I can. Yeah, Dan, can you, just, can you show the black structures? Yeah, there you go. That is the infrastructure for the existing wastewater treatment plant. That has been assessed by our consultant as well as, kind of affirmed by the engineer for DCAM. That there's needs of about $25 million of investment to refurbish, restore that facility so it functions as it was originally designed.
And so 25 million, we get that back to 310,000 gallons.
Correct.
What's it cost to get it to what you're wanting to get to?
So what I'm gonna share is preliminary costs, right? We're working almost real time with value. What we're looking
I
at,
thought you said at least when we met that that the plant had never produced at that rate, that there was no history that it
So,
actually reached those levels of treatment.
so the question is 25 enough?
Okay.
That's a question. If it's never, and we do know historically, at least over the last 20 years, and I don't know before that, that it has been several 100,000 gallons, but I don't know if it's 250,000, 223. I don't have those facts. But I haven't heard that it ever produced 310,000 gallons, at least in the last 20 years. So we know that.
Sorry, is that because it never needed
It
to?
never needed to.
Okay, got it.
That's right.
Okay.
They were below their permit. It's actually why we approached them 25 years ago to see could we partner with them and maybe use some of that excess capacity.
Got it.
Okay, so, what we are looking at is if it's $25 million to refurbish it, to bring it back to its potential. That would be a cost per gallon of the 310,000 gallons that are now gonna be, made available for redevelopment. When we looked at the concept of groundwater discharge as well on that site, you're not talking about the same cost per gallon to increase that flow. In essence, you're creating sand beds, much like a leaching area. It will add additional treatment and volume, but it's significantly less than the brick and mortar that you've had to invest in that facility. So we are, and this is very preliminary, somewhere in the range of $80 per gallon, if we can realize full kind of build out to $100 per gallon, and that's a ballpark, if we can't.
80 if we can do groundwater, 100 if we can.
Correct, per gallon. But also what's important is we're creating enough capacity so that the town can also develop outside of this campus, which has been throttled, and we know that.
Would
So-
we be capped with 310, whether it's groundwater or?
No, we'd be looking at a total of, we're looking at a range, and that's what I want to kind of share with it on this plan. So couple things that we're trying to do. We're trying to identify the area, the land of interest. If the town were to accept ownership of that facility. And so, yeah, Dan, if you can kind of highlight a red oval around that infrastructure, that's a 300-foot buffer or offset from the existing facility. That number is based on NEWIPIC, New England Interstate Water Pollution Control Commission, has guidance on areas around a wastewater treatment plant where they would not advise residential development. So that's a standard and guidance that we can sort of look at as far as for New England. If you use that, say, all right, that area is not going to be desirable for residential development. If there's a kind of a blue dashed line, it's really just to kind of create meets and bounds, around that oval.
This.
Yeah, outside the red.
Yeah.
That. That's just simply to capture an area that would say, if we took that area and delegated that for wastewater and not for other development, you're talking about an area there of, I think it's about 13.5 acres. If you look south of the infrastructure, Dan, that's the dashed line.
Yeah.
It's black.
Yeah.
Right there, yep, and you go all the way down, so. At first, there's a little jog with the blue, that's it's the property line between Junction Village and MCI, so that little jog. Says if we go further south, we need to work with Junction Village and that development as well. But the black line is the former sand beds that accompanied that wastewater treatment facility.
Again, that's this.
That large area, you can keep all the way down south, Dan.
Yeah.
Okay,
So those are already sand beds.
those were sand beds. Those are areas that could be repurposed into groundwater leaching area. part of the land to the west of the existing facilities could also potentially be used for groundwater infiltration or sand beds as well. Because if we're not gonna build on it, that allows us to potentially expand the amount of sand beds that are used for recharge. And every time, if the more we can use that areas for groundwater, the higher, the more volume we'll be able to treat. And again, we're thinking about not just on this campus, but, you know, part of the town. So we're exploring those. Talking with Keith on the impact that it might have on the Junction Village. We're sort of looking at a corridor that, you know, just so we understand, a sand bed, you're not gonna have structures on top of it, but you can have trails, paths, dog park, open space, you know, something like that. It's just, you know, it'd be a mound that, you know, so it's just, go ahead.
Just for people probably already realize it, but there's the RPA, the River Protection Act,
Yeah.
that this sort of magenta line that runs up, so that's out of play as well. And if you remember the exercise that Aaron took us through, we kind of anticipated some of that through your zoning.
But if we're looking at this picture though, the land that might have been assumed to be developable is sort of in the yellow.
That's right.
Yeah.
Is
Correct.
so 13.5 acres sounds like a lot, but that includes a lot of buffer zone for the river anyway, that.
Right.
That's correct. That's correct. And we will start sort of mapping out the numbers. This is a concept we want to just
Right.
start with what we're trying to do and why. And basically, we're trying to frame something for DCAM to understand, as well as the advisory board. You know, and eventually the select board, what area would be of interest if it was designated for wastewater treatment? And that's the area that we're sort of identifying. That should help DCAM determine what additional work needs to be done in that area to determine, you know, that's where we're now getting to the point of doing more environmental assessment work, more detailed work. It would also obviously help with the development of not just Junction Village, but we're really looking at ranges of anywhere from 150 to 300,000 gallons of additional capacity, depending on how much of that area could be repurposed for groundwater recharge.
In the zone, the 300 offset, it's identified as residential, should you have other types of construction?
There could be.
Where are you talking about?
So there's a zone that's sort of yellow, that's within the cyan
yeah.
border. And it's not a no build situation like the riverfront, but it is limited to the type of construction, it sounds like. So
Correct.
maybe you can have commercial uses there, but not residential.
Smell, is that?
Yeah, it's basically, it's guidance on wastewater, you know, you're gonna have. Both odor and aesthetics and buffer area, and again, it's guidance, it's not a standard. But it is for any new wastewater treatment facility to be looking at that kind of offset.
He says like a leaching field. Is it actually, could you actually do something on top of it?
That's right, you can even have parking on top of it. So we're looking at how to maximize, what we're trying to do is say, carve out, that's not ideal for residential.
Right.
But what else, right? And we do wanna make sure that the groundwater recharge is what we need to sort of preserve, because that's just capacity that the town doesn't have any other options, really, so. So in essence, the concept goes back to, you know, Linda, the question is cost per gallon that we're gonna be working through, but very back of the envelope right now based on some technical, some geotech work that was done. We didn't do it in the Junction Village area, but it's similar kind of geology and similar function as what was just north of that. But we did some detailed borings to determine what could be the carrying capacity of that wastewater or those sand beds. I will premise that part of the regulatory control is something called mounding. You know, when you add a wastewater to a leaching area, a mound will occur. And one of the challenges is you don't want to have too much mounding in direct contact to the riverfront. That is a constraint, which is why we're really looking, Dan, if you show the area outside the 200-foot buffer, all that, you know, to the west of that 200-foot buffer and go down south. That's where we're talking about the, you know, putting the groundwater, recharge area.
Do you know yet? I'm just
Yeah.
curious. Do you know yet where the groundwater is? Have you done those?
Yeah, they did. That was part of the geotech work they did on the existing sand beds.
Do we know approximately how?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, the report was done. The loading calculations have been presented between 150,000 and 300,000 is based on what they saw as far as the sands and gravels that were there, as well as the offset to the existing groundwater level.
Dan, you have a couple hands raised.
Oh, sorry. Keith?
Yeah, thanks, Keith Bergman. I just heard my name a couple of times, so I just wanted to clarify. I'm on the land use working group representing housing interests, but it's the Concord, as Peter and Lee well know, it's the Concord Housing Development Corporation that owns the Junction Village property. But the briefing I got is because I'm on the land use working group, and I then volunteered to attend all the other meetings when Alan takes this show on the road, and happy to be here tonight.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Alan, and the numbers that you're quoting, are you factoring in what the state is going to be using for the farm and the DOT building?
You know, I'm not allocating it to any one use. I'm just talking about the range of capacity could be anywhere from 310, which is existing, you know, that's the discharge permit, plus 150 to 300,000 gallons.
So, yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of cost per gallon, and the state obviously should be paying for its own.
Oh, yeah, that would all be part of, you know, the mechanics and financing is to come. But really, the first question is, what's the volume available? And then what's the cost per gallon?
Right. The volume's going to be, well, tell me what's the rough estimate of what the volume is going to be going for the state uses?
Oh, we are still determining that. We've had numbers out there in the 65,000 gallons of existing use. We're still drilling into some information, you know, unfortunately with the state, we're still doing evaluation of their infrastructure and assets. And so I don't have the complete information. We do know their collection system is in significant and has been disrepair. And so they're going to need to replace the entire service line all the way from the farm down to the treatment facility. And the integrity of that pipe, it's questionable as far as is water infiltrating or exfiltrating. We're still going through, you know, that analysis as we speak.
Alan, why wouldn't they just put a leaching field up there? You would think that with all the land they have.
Because
That would be much less
anything over
expensive.
10,000 gallons a day, you require sophisticated treatment. So they'd have to have a packaged treatment facility for their operation. And again, it's ultimately, at the end of the day, for everybody around the room, the common denominator is cost per gallon and capacity. The state's gonna do the same. If they were somehow to figure out we could get away cheaper and do a packaged treatment plant, they probably would. What the state doesn't really want to be is in the business of wastewater treatment. That's not their bailiwick.
So in the cost for the farm to fix the pipe, is that in the 25 million then, and then it's improving the beds as that may give us this additional 100 to 150 included in the 25 million?
So think of it this way, the collection system and pipe that the state has, they need to replace.
That's on them.
That's on them. That's not part of any of the cost
Okay.
estimates to date. And when they do that, they know we want to be working with them because any infrastructure they put in, we want to make sure it could complement whatever future development might happen. So, you know, if they were to install a new collection line, they'd probably have to relocate it You're not gonna replace it where it is, because some of it's on the other side of the wall, they've cleaned that up. And we also wanna make sure that where would be potentially be connecting in to carry the wastewater from the new development into the same collection system, so they know we're interested in having that conversation. The issue as far as the 25 million for the 310,
Mhm.
I'm just gonna make it 300, make it easy. Imagine if you can get 600 for 30 million. That's the kind of numbers we gotta start, crunching. And again, everybody would benefit, even the development on that campus, because the cost per gallon is gonna go down for the redevelopment.
And then one, sorry,
Yeah.
you said at the beginning, right now, people don't, or the state doesn't allow new infrastructure altogether, like.
They don't allow new, it's not the state, the discharge, the surface water discharge is not a thing you can even get
Got
through
it.
EPA, and that's really federal, that's
Got
EPA. DEP oversees groundwater discharge, and they'd be the regulatory entity we'd be working with, and we're at a point after this meeting to start those conversations. We haven't gone to this date yet, because this is very conceptual, but we do know the mechanics of it, and that's what we're kind of presenting.
Alan, just to go through the acreage again, so do I have it right, the teal outline was 13.5 acres?
That's right.
And then what is the black outline that goes down into Junction Village?
That's a good question. Hold on a second. Let me,
And can you tell us how much of the yellow is inside the teal?
no,
I believe that's calculated.
it can't be calculated, but, so the area, let's see.
35%.
It looks
Okay,
like
I'm sorry, the proposed boundary of land to go to the wastewater treatment plant, that's the cyan dashed polygon, is 14.5. The Junction Village area of interest is 2.5 acres.
That black is only 2.5.
It's part of that black is within the existing 300-foot. So we're not gonna double count it.
It's only area outside.
It's only area outside of that cyan,
That's
yeah,
2.5 acres.
that 2.5
Probably,
acres.
probably the lower polygon, because then there's a little bit that's both.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, just in terms of the map, there is the wall. And the wall is, I believe, inside of that buffer area.
Yeah, Dan, can you show the wall? You can see it kind of a shade there, just, yeah, that feature.
If the purpose is to provide, a visual element, I mean, it would seem to me that you could retain the wall and make it into a part of a walking path or whatever.
When you say visual, you mean,
The buffer, I'm really not quite clear on exactly how much of the buffer is the mounding issue, or how much of the buffer is just a visual element that's recommended not to have why there isn't residential. And I think Kent was saying that it was primarily a aesthetic issue as opposed to a
Correct, not just visual, but also odor.
yes, that's.
also odor.
Oh, yeah, odor is even more of the
Even if
driver.
it's under a parking lot,
What's that?
even if it's under a parking lot?
So John, like what I.
No, the odor of is, I'm
Coming
sorry.
from the treatment.
It's from the treatment facility. The groundwater discharger will not have an odor. It's really the processing and the,
These
clarifiers and whatnot.
Big wide open tanks that are in the ground, you don't really see them when you're at ground level. If you're up in a building, you would see them, but otherwise it just kind of. But the smell is bad, so.
Yeah,
and
So at the end of the day, if the wind is blowing west, is no one gonna wanna live there?
when we're done.
Yeah.
Would someone want, yes, this is a design standard, this is, wastewater often happens in populated areas, right? So we're just gonna use the guidance design standards as our metric. I don't think we wanna go beyond that,
But is that good enough that not actually?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I tell you what. The the research to date would suggest yes. That's not my opinion. It's basically what TR16 informs New England. When you're designing a new facility, you should, have this sort of buffer before you have residential development. I live up in Newburyport. There are residents closer than that. Is it desirable? I'm sure it has an impact on the value of the property. But they've done a lot to that facility to upgrade in the last 20 years. It's very different now than it was 20 years ago.
It's probably a little bit like noise and a little bit like, the people's tolerance for and temperature. Some people are gonna pick up on smell more than others.
This is concept. This is
Yeah.
kind of what we'd like to do is start informing the advisory board of what that area, because it's been this amorphous what. Now we're starting to nail down on certain criteria. We want to work with, at least go to the select board, talk about the concept, because the next step is part of the negotiation with DCAM. Is to provide some clarity as far as what areas, are we looking at? And the good news is they shouldn't be too surprised, because we've been talking about the expansion of, we're repurposing the groundwater, the filter beds. And you can see, and they know the same information we have. So really, it's just that 300-foot buffer, which just, that's the basis to use.
Ellen, would, ideally for you, you would obviously wanna keep the 300-foot buffer. And you want to use some of that also for expansion of groundwater?
Some of that,
Okay, so that would limit building probably in some of that area,
some of that area.
That's the.
plus
that's
the existing sand bed.
That's right, the existing sand beds are pretty clearly, they've been determined that they would function.
Yeah.
There might need to be a little bit of work done, but mostly, before we start poking and prodding, we gotta let the state know what area we want to be doing that in. So, and we would owe them a plan of work so they could see what it is proposing. They approved all the work we've done to date, including the geotech stuff.
I assume the Junction Village parcel abandoned the sand bed that's there in the original design plan.
Yes.
Yeah, that was predated Junction Village being sort of carved out.
It had already been abandoned and
Correct,
development was gonna happen.
that's right.
Scott,
For the work that Wesley Sampson was doing, did they actually put together sort of a conceptual or any kind of design and put together an estimate, or are they just ballparking it right now, or what are they doing?
We're kind of real time getting that information,
No design, there hasn't been
There hasn't been a detailed design yet, so generally you do the geotech work they did. Then you could do a more detailed loading study. We haven't done that yet.
so. Do you need all that information prior to going to the board or the select board or?
No, I think we're at a point where we can start talking about the area of interest.
Okay.
DCAM's I will tell you this, they're very eager to see the town move forward.
Yeah,
And I think this will at least give them information that's not just this. What about? We have a pretty good sense of the area that we'd say, if the town were to take ownership, we need to know more about that particular land.
so I would imagine DCAM would do their own estimate if they're negotiating with.
They'll be working with us, yeah.
So I'm still trying to get to how many acres would be left for the MCI development after we subtract the cyan in the teal and the section, the two in it, not counting Junction Village.
Yeah, we can get that information, because that, and excluding the riverfront, correct? The area that
Yeah,
can't be.
yeah, we worked on that.
Or mine is the stuff we're talking about, sign.
Yeah.
And just, from a timing standpoint,
Hmm?
at what point do you think you will have a good understanding of exactly what you would like to do with accompanying costs and the sense of what the cost per gallon and all that? Are you weeks away from that, months away from that?
Well, I think the due diligence is get the environmental work done on that area. The state doesn't want to poke and prod into areas that might be, they're interested in what are the areas that we want to sort of lean into, and so we're gonna, recommend that at least the area under their control, we wanna lean into that to do the phase 2 environmental work. And then working to the south, we'll always wanna work with Junction Village as well. Which is why, with Keith at least being aware of that group and being on the working group for the municipal land, sort of makes a good sort of bridge, at least of understanding.
So do we already have environmental information about the Junction Village property?
Yes,
Yeah.
just from, before the start of that
Right.
development.
Is that been made available to, or Western Central?
I'm not sure we've gone this far. I mean, we're literally just putting this out there for discussion, so that would be helpful if you share that with us.
Yeah, Elizabeth?
So I'm trying to think about how we're gonna recoup some of these costs. Obviously, DCAM's gonna want us to take this over because they don't want to put the money into redoing the infrastructure and they need the gallons. But when they now have this property that they give, grant to a developer, how do we get that money back? Or I assume this is part of the negotiation with how we can recoup some of the money that we're putting into this from the developer? Or would that be done through a sewer improvement fee?
But I could speak to the sewer improvement fee. I mean, that's really gonna be whatever the cost per gallon is. If there's a decision to give a different rate for one entity versus another, that's to be determined. I'm not sure, how that would work. But beyond that, I couldn't really speak to
Which,
it.
just from my point of view, we're call it 60,000 gallons for their existing uses, and then they're gonna have this developer who they choose, and we're essentially creating the infrastructure for them. Seems to me that we need to figure out how to recoup our infrastructure costs from the state.
Yeah, I don't think we've not teased that idea. We just haven't had that negotiation yet.
Elizabeth,
But
I
it's
think,
part of, yeah,
well, I think that, again, I think this is an area where we haven't spent a lot of time together. But it does, there's an argument to be made that says that the state is the one that has caused that facility to be fully depreciated, let's say, right? And then with the remediation costs we're looking at for environmental issues on the site itself. So I think there's an argument to be made that the state should cover some or all of that cost. So I'm just making the point that I wouldn't assume that the town of Concord has to bear it all. I am hopeful that the Commonwealth will bear some or all.
yeah, that's my point. I'm glad to hear you say it too, John.
Anyone else have?
But it also makes sense that future users from pay to gain access to that capacity is right.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of who's putting up the money to get the work done and making
And most of the work's gonna be, if it's borrowed, there'll be a long time, pay it back and users. I also preface, if we had this capacity available tomorrow, it's still gonna take 10 to 20 years to have it, 80% realized. That's the design, that's, the reality.
It is interesting too to think about the fact that essentially to reconnect the correctional facility and the barracks and so forth. They've got to build what amounts to, half of the collection main that's gonna go into the rest of the site. You think about sort of swaths going east-west that, generally north-south running collection main is gonna be the main that would be used by the rest of that development. So part of that, there's definitely a lot of overlapping costs and expenses here potentially as long as it's being rebuilt.
Any other questions, Ron? Or any other points you wanna make?
No, I think we'll be talking, on the agenda for the select board, that was a conversation on Monday. On Monday as well, to bring them up to speed on this. With the goal of eventually getting something to DCAM to start a more realistic conversation.
I have one question. I'm just curious what the cost would be of a new facility. I'm just thinking, like, this is 25 million for fixing up an dilapidated facility.
Yeah.
A new facility, Just say you've found a new location or you put it on another place, it would be about.
We've been told, I don't have the numbers, but it would be more. I think repurposing some of that structure. The clarifiers and things, they're just, concrete chambers and, having to rebuild those elsewhere, it's just gonna be additional cost. The fact that some of that is within the resource buffer area to begin with, it's grandfathered, so there's that value of
Yeah, that's what I-
real estate that's not gonna be taking over somewhere else.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, the NIPD's ultimately is, we wouldn't and couldn't relocate that. The discharge is the discharge, no matter where and what's feeding it.
That's the-
Correct.
How do we think about in that sort of gray area, just north of the actual wastewater treatment facilities where they have what is it, the generation facility and the steam plant and so
Yeah.
forth? Do you think of that as potentially usable in a way it needs to be removed or something else like, I'm looking at.
Anything that could be
These
repurposed is ideal, especially in that area. I mean, we know there's an access road, that's gonna continue to be. We know there's gonna be new infrastructure they gotta bring down for the collection system, in that same general area. We know that's going to divide some of the property. That access road just is gonna mean the area between the access road and the buffer area is limited. So I think whatever we can do to repurpose any infrastructure is ideal, but those are some of the things we wanna start.
Yeah, if I remember from the tour, they had their emergency generator, so presumably a substation for the new development. Could go in something like that, that's really not human occupied, and could easily exist within that zone anyway.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
Legally, yes, sir.
Hmm.
Sorry.
So I had one final question, so hung up on the offset, the 300-foot buffer. That, there's a zone there, obviously, that's buildable area. It's outside of the wastewater treatment plant, outside of the buffers. We wouldn't necessarily need to claim that as town property. It would just have to have special zoning restrictions on it, assuming we weren't using it for
Collection
groundwater
area,
discharge.
yeah.
Yeah, if it was just, buffer area,
Mhm.
similar to like a river offset or something, it could still be part of the parcel. For development, it just would have limits on or recommended limits on where it was going.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alan.
I think this slide is a great slide, very informative.
Colors are amazing.
I'll pass it along to Weston and Sampson, they like the colors.
John's a big fan of cyan.
Developers pro check.
And one thing that would be helpful on that is just like doing the math on the acreage.
Yeah, no, I hear you, yeah, this is just. I understand the purpose of the question, so we can get that
We
information.
talked about that, we talked about also the cost, as another slide, or maybe next version of the slide, have it picking up the cost per gallon.
Yeah.
It's gotta be 5 or less.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Do you want any?
No, I think it's just, we're all working together, right? We've got the select board, we've got the advisory board, we've got the working group. We got Public Works, and most importantly, we got DCAM, and I think they are interested in getting some feedback, so.
Is it the same people at DCAM that we're working with, or a different group that you're working with?
It's the same group,
It's the same group.
same group.
Okay, well, if it's beneficial or useful to have a representative,
Okay,
thank you.
very good,
Thanks, Andy.
all right. I'm gonna go talk Sister City, Japan now.
All right, the next item of business is a debrief discussion with a ladies working group. A lot of us participated in that, right? This is, it feels like eons ago, I don't know why.
It does.
Linda, have you been to, meeting of the land use working group as our representative yet?
Can't remember if I was official or not, it's been a little confusing, but yes. So, I can't say that there's been anything that meaningful, there primarily the work that's going on is in the 3 subcommittees. And I will say that each of the subcommittees in their own way runs into MCI Concord. So that continues. I think that on the other hand, if you look at them and take them apart, probably the public safety is interesting. And they're primarily eliminating just all the areas throughout the town that wouldn't be suitable. And the suitability issues relate to the size of the properties and the distance from the town centers, especially for fire, in terms of service time. So their job is just, cutting down to the quick. The other group that's moving along is municipal consolidation. And there it's more granular. There's a lot of questions about why do we have 18 different properties throughout town? And what are the purposes of each of them? And they're going systematically through that process. The Public Works Group has just had one initial meeting because of our change over. And the 2 other people on the group are very capable. One has a background in wastewater treatment and is works for a very large construction firm that's now working on a very large project in Boston area. All identify it, you saw it visually. And the other individual knows a lot about the regulatory. So I think we'll get a bit of momentum, but it hasn't been that much because we just had our organization. Yeah. I'd say the other thing that is not in the land use area, but just want to remind everybody about is the MBTA communities issue. And that is we are compliant, but we do not fit all the criteria that are required with our existing proposal that was passed by town meeting in terms of what EOHLC requires of us. And so there is, I think, has been a reticence to even look at the MCI property. However, Junction Village is under the MTA communities as one of the districts. And so that question continues to come up. Should there be any more involvement in terms of MBTA communities looking at a greater part of the footprint of MCI Concord? And so far, one of the reasons it hasn't been is that they're willing for us to do our works. But it's the sidelight of what's going on. Stern.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to bring you more updates, but right now I've been doing trying to catch up on site plans, and I think the next, site visits. The next site visit is to the Peabody property. And I'm sorry, Ripley. And that's gonna be very interesting along with Peabody in terms of alternative sites that might be considered for locations other than C.
Yeah, I think my recollection is one of the questions that came up is that, do they have sort of inventory of the space needs that they have? And I don't think they have developed that yet, they're working towards it. But I think that's
They went a whole report from like 5 years ago.
Yeah, that 5 year ago report,
Yeah.
it's like 800 pages of
That's huge.
every statistic you could want, but it's.
It's less than the update, but it's good.
that's study on, so.
Yeah, I mean, the key thing is that there's a matrix from that report that identifies the sort of space deficiencies by department. Which is particularly acute in public safety. And, public works, but they kind of just everyone.
I mean, there are two phases of the project, which is a little bit debatable, but the urgent phase is on public safety, public works, and then consolidation, and then the other areas of, further interest will be housing and recreation.
That was one thing that struck me in our meeting with them, but I thought was unfortunate, because the housing is such an important piece of what we're talking about. And I kind of wish they were gonna accelerate their discussion of housing, because frankly, looking at this site, at our site, it seems like a good place for some public works, you know, utilization. And some of their sites, like PV School, for example, what a great place for housing, right? And if they were farther along, we could potentially talk about, you know, how we potentially horse trade, right, for trade uses. Because I think what they're really trying to do is find the optimal site for those different uses. And that really is the key thing. And we are probably the biggest component of the broader set of properties they're looking at, right? So they're looking at so many sites. We're kind of a subset of their work at this point, right? And yet ours is complex for a number of reasons. And I wish they had flipped it, or at least they would talk about both at the same time. Do you have a sense of when they're gonna start talking about housing?
I think your point is that logic will prevail, and they're gonna have to address that issue. But they just started, you know, and the summer has been a little bit slow in terms of
Sure.
the ability to, you know, create a lot of momentum, but I think that, will probably evolve more quickly than it's stated in the scope of their work. And I think especially if, how, you know, depending on how the select board views, the sense that there may be, a greater need for more, land use at MCI Concord, that will also accelerate it, but speculation.
I don't see any other questions. I'm gonna just run quickly to the subcommittee reports. Is there anything that anyone wants to report? Peter, John, Lee? All right, you can do public comment, then we'll transition into executive session. Any public comment? Let me see. Everyone in the room. All right, thank you. Then I believe we have to take a vote.
To go out and, I think we also have to say that we're not gonna come back
Yeah,
into
so we need a motion
open.
for, the enter session. To consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. Since the chair declares that an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body. And not to return to open session, and that's my motion.
Thank you. Have a second?
I would be happy to third it.
Okay, so Scott, second.
And then roll call.
Roll
Yeah,
call.
a third to read it over again.
Peter,
Aye.
Linda,
Hi.
Scott, Dan, John, Mark,
Aye.
Emily, Aaron,
Hi.
Lee, Patrick, Elizabeth.
Hi.
Thank you.